Chairman Payne, Ranking Member Smith, and the distinguished members of this committee, thank you for holding this very important hearing that puts a spotlight on Ethiopia and documented human rights abuses in the Ogaden and elsewhere. I am honored to be here to participate in this and speak to this very subject that is very dear to my heart, which is the plight of the people of Ogaden, also known as the Somali region in Ethiopia. Mr. Chairman, in light of the time constraints, as I read a condensed version of my testimony, I would like to ask that my full testimony be submitted into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you. I represent Ogaden Human Rights Committee as the chair of OHRC Canada. OHRC is an independent, voluntary, non-for-profit organization which was initially founded in 1995. As I said, I'm going to do a condensed version of my testimony.
Yes, unfortunately, we're going to ask each of you, because there will be the Ethiopian bill coming up around noon, and I have to handle it on the floor, so we do have a real time constraint. Thank you.
We all know that the current regime in Ethiopia has disappointed not only the Ethiopian masses, but also the international community. In the Ogaden recently, New York Times journalists were harassed and jailed for some days. It is important to note that, according to a Washington Post on April 13, 1998, during the 3-year period between 1995 and 1998, the current regime has arrested and detained more journalists than any other government on the continent of Africa. So this has been going on for a long time. The people of Ogaden and many other areas have witnessed and suffered under a violent and aggressive state machinery for a long time. Mr. Chairman, sadly there are now countless instances where it seems that rape is being used as a weapon. In 2003, the Ethiopian troops commander in Qabri Daharre in the Ogaden told a gathering in the township, and I quote, "Any women suspected of harboring or being a relative of an ONLF member would be raped and then killed." Women from the Ogaden region have recounted stories, as my colleague has just also confirmed. Mr. Chairman and distinguished members, you might be aware, almost the entire population of the Ogaden are Muslim, and as such they raise their daughters in a very traditional way. Now I would like you to imagine the atrocities that these women go through and the stigma that they live with in a traditional society, but also the alarming rate with which they contract STDs and HIV/AIDS. Mr. Chairman, many have compared what is happening in the Ogaden to Darfur. I would submit to you that the actions of the Zenawi regime placed upon the Ogaden can be defined as acts of genocide. The definition of genocide, especially the first 3 articles, are killing members of a group, causing serious bodily harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring in whole or in part to their destruction. I would submit to you, sir, that what has been happening in the Ogaden can't fit under this definition. Here is an example. On July 2007, July 22nd, in Qorile, Ethiopia, armed forces came in and arrested a whole group of people, and they brought their names with them. They transferred them. And on July 21st, they have hanged them on acacia trees to die. Fridwan is a survivor who told about that massacre. You have her picture in your folders. She has survived that. She was left to die, and she told about that. It's imperative that we do something about this, sir. In conclusion, while we, the Ogaden community in the diaspora, applaud this very important hearing, we want you to know that this is only the beginning. We are going to hold you, sir, and your distinguished members accountable as well. You have now taken the task of researching what is happening on the ground. Therefore, you have no choice but to take action. Ladies and gentlemen, I applaud you for your leadership, but I implore you to live up to the standards of human dignity that your constituents here home live by. I would like to point out that it's not only the people of Ogaden. Many other regions of Ethiopia have suffered under this regime. Sir, the Ethiopian regime needs to be challenged. Mr. Chairman, it's important to underline that there are some facts about democracy as a universal principle of governance, and it's a moral imperative, a social process, a particular kind of a political system which applies to all societies, including Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a country with great ethnic and linguistic diversity as well as religious. Ethiopians need to be very careful, as well as the international community, not to fall into the trap of a narrowly defined nation-building ideologies, which can be summarized, sir, one people, one nation, one political party, and one supreme leader like we have in Meles Zenawi. That is a disastrous path that Africa has gone down to. The United States and the international community, sir, can facilitate a dialogue among the different ethnic groups in Ethiopia. A dialogue, I hope, would lead to peace in the Ogaden through a comprehensive political and conflict resolution processes, and most importantly, that bring substantive gender equity and help the Ethiopian masses to heal after the abuses of successive regimes. Mr. Chairman, unless there is a political solution and we find a political solution for the Ogaden cause, I fear that what is going on is going to be continuous. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for giving me the time and the opportunity to do this today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. Ms. Modeska?
Thank you. Chairman Payne, Ranking Member Smith, distinguished members of the House Africa Subcommittee, and committee staff. It's a distinct honor and privilege for me to be invited to address you here today on the subject of democracy, the rule of law, and human rights in Ethiopia. Mr. Chairman, I want to take this special opportunity to thank you and this subcommittee for standing with me and my fellow political prisoners in our darkest hours in prison. We remember vividly, Mr. Chairman, when you traveled all the way to visit us in Kaliti prison in 2006. Your words comforted us then, as they did throughout our imprisonment when you called for our immediate and unconditional release. I thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I am the first vice chairperson of the Coalition for Unity and Democracy Party. Prior to my election to this position, I served as a judge on the Federal First Instance Court for close to 7 years. After I resigned from the judiciary, I started my own private law practice for over 2 years until I was thrown in jail in October 2005. I spent nearly 21 months in prison on various alleged state crimes and was released with 77 of my colleagues on July 20, 2007. Mr. Chairman, in my opening statement, I will briefly summarize my testimony. I respectfully request the Chairman to include my prepared statement in the official record of these proceedings.
That will be done with pleasure.
Thank you. In my testimony today, I would like to provide the committee with a brief overview of the state of democracy in my country since the May 2005 parliamentary elections and outline some ideas that could be helpful in the establishment of democracy and protection of human rights in Ethiopia in the foreseeable future. Mr. Chairman, as you very well know, the period immediately preceding the May 2005 elections was an extraordinary time in Ethiopia's history. For the first time in Ethiopia's history, the seeds of democracy were planted throughout the land, and on May 15th, Ethiopians came out by the millions to harvest a bounty of democracy. The preparations for the 2005 parliamentary elections were unprecedented in the country's history. For the first time, genuine political competition by the various